Welcome to Mitzvah Expo, the Jewish Community Organization Showcase hosted by Rabbi Cantor Dr. Linda Bernstein.
Shalom and welcome to Mitzvah Expo, a new podcast and website showcasing the organizations and initiatives that enhance Jewish life, fight injustice, support Israel, strengthen our ties to the broader community, and more. I'm Rabbi Linda. Our goal is simple. We want you to get informed and be inspired by the work these valuable Jewish organizations do on our behalf every day. Alongside this podcast, our website at mitzvahexpo.org serves as a companion hub. There you'll find a showcase page for every organization featured on the program, with more information about their work and ways to connect with them. Today, our Mitzvah Expo featured organization is the Anti-Defamation League. I'm pleased to welcome Jackie Solomont, Senior Associate Regional Director for the Central Pacific region, covering Northern California, Hawaii, and Utah. Her primary focus is on community engagement, working with Jewish and non-Jewish communities to combat anti-Semitism and build the blueprint to fight all forms of bias. The ADL has 3 pillars that drive its valuable work. First, protect. Safeguard communities by monitoring and disrupting threats, responding to acts of anti-Semitism, and taking legal action to confront this hate. Secondly, advocate. Create lasting change by advocating for laws, policies, and protections to build safer communities at all levels of government and across tech platforms. And thirdly, educate. Develop interventions to effectively combat anti-Semitism and provide millions with powerful tools to understand and respond to hate in K-12 schools, universities, workplaces, and communities. Welcome, everyone, to Mitzvah Expo. I'm Rabbi Linda Bernstein, and so happy here to have Jackie Solomont, who is representing the Anti-Defamation League for us today. And Jackie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Jackie, tell us what you do at the ADL and what is your mission there?
Sure. So my role is Senior Associate Regional Director for the Central Pacific region, which covers Northern California, Utah, and Hawaii. And what I specifically focus on is community engagement. And what that means is working with Jewish and non-Jewish communities to combat anti-Semitism and really to build the blueprint to fight all forms of bias.
And how long have you been doing this work?
Personally, so as a volunteer, I did it for about 3 years, and the past 10 months of which has been professionally. I've worked in the Jewish community for about 4 years, and got involved in the ADL through our Glass Leadership Institute, which is a young professional leadership fellowship. And when moving to the Bay Area, decided to make it my full-time job.
Excellent. Well, they're lucky to have you. And so I'm going to kind of transition now to the organization itself. And what is the core mission of the Anti-Defamation League?
Sure. So the core mission is to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and secure justice and fair treatment to all. A 2-pronged mission.
So can you kind of explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, of course. So we are over 100-year-old organization. I think we're up to 113 now. And it was founded in the wake of the lynching of Leo Frank. And the mission, our core mission statement really came to be because it was believed even back then that in order to fight anti-Semitism, you also need to address other forms of hate. No individual bias happens in a vacuum, and so they really are all connected. And now what has become is we really have these 3 main pillars to the organization and to our work: protect, advocate, and educate. Protect really has to do with our Center on Extremism and the work that we do to try and prevent bad things from happening, to try and research and report and keep track of things online, things and such, so that we can work with law enforcement, community security, things like that, to really stop an incident before it happens. Advocate rather is really advocating at all levels of community. So all the way up to federal, all the way down to local community. I'm really making sure that the policies and are in place to protect our community, to protect the rights not only of the Jewish community, but all marginalized communities. And lastly, educate, that really focuses on educating ourselves, educating the people around us to understand what anti-Semitism is, what it looks like, how it manifests, and how to talk about it, how to try and combat that in using education, using anti-bias trainings, and things of that nature.
So, there's a certain amount of overlap between a lot of the major Jewish organizations like the JCRC, the American Jewish Committee. They all have sort of similar kinds of missions, but yours is really a focus is on as an anti-defamation league and to fight hate and bias and discrimination, and that's your main focus. Is that true?
Yes, we definitely take anti-Semitism at the forefront of our work. But as I said before, what I really strongly believe the reason for that is because of that blueprint that we're building, and is because we are laying the groundwork that can be replicated to fight other forms of hate. Right now in this country, there's not really a secret. Anti-Semitism is at an all-time high. And so by focusing on that, we still believe that we are remaining true to the second half of our mission statement, in using what we're learning in the fight against anti-Semitism to benefit all communities.
What are the most pressing issues facing the Jewish community in Israel today, and how do you, as an organization, address those issues?
So we address the issues really with our three pillars, with those three core missions of protect, advocate, and educate. I think that the I think what we're facing a lot right now is conflict conflict driven anti-Semitism. It's kind of the com conflating things that are happening in the Middle East with American Jewry, and the role that you could say that Jews in the US or other places in the diaspora are facing. Um, it basically treating the Jewish community in the diaspora as representative of the Israeli government, as representative of Israeli communities, things like that. And so I think that that is a really understanding the nuance and understanding that distinction is one of the things that is fairly difficult right now. I think another thing is that social media has unfortunately been playing a huge role in the way that people are educating themselves and the way that people are getting their information. And so, one of our biggest challenges is really figuring out how to counter that. How do we get the information that we are researching so thoroughly and carefully, that we are finding data and fact to back up? How do we get that out there? How do we educate people on that information and kind of try and balance out some of the misinformation that can be found online and also can be really scary to find online?
For sure. In some ways, you're a preventative role, and you also have a proactive role, and you have to be reactive at the same time, because when something bad happens, God forbid, then one of the
Yeah.
first organizations that we hear from is the ADL. And so, do you have like a team that's kind of your, your emergency team, your emergent, like like when something happens today, you can react immediately?
Yes. We have a lot of different teams. We have a lot of centers, a lot of institutes within the ADL. I think that the main focus for kind of when something does happen, a lot of the time it is the people on the ground. It is the people in the individual regions who are the ones who are going to respond. Now, that doesn't necessarily look the same for every region. Sometimes there's more manpower than other times, and the same person who is, for example, doing the work that I do and really getting into the education and the community aspect is the same person who will do incident response. And what that looks like for us is really the first thing we do when we hear of something is we reach out to our community. We reach out to the people who are affected because we want to talk to them. We want to support them. And from there, it's really just a team of amazing communication professionals who really help make sure that our statements are direct. They make clear what is not okay about any individual incident, and also that it makes very also clear our support for the community and our support for um, the people who are, I mean, in some cases, our neighbors.
Sure. You mentioned the centers and institutes within the ADL. Tell us about those.
Ooh, there's a lot. We could spend a lot of time on each one individually. So run through them at a really quick.
Okay.
So our Center on Extremism is really, it is the core of our organization in a lot of ways. They kind of all are, but really that is where we are tracking things online. That is where we are getting our data and our information on incidents and on anti-Semitic activity. Specifically, we have people who are scouring the deepest, darkest corners of the internet and really making sure that they are spotting extremism and getting to the bottom of it before it can turn into an incident in the real world, I guess you could say. That is really, it's really important work. We have other organizations that will come in and sit with our people in the Center on Extremism to learn from them and to figure out what tools they can bring back to their own organizations. So we really do try and share as much of what we're doing with others as we can, especially because a lot of the tools that we've built for the Center on Extremism are our own. We haven't contracted from other companies or anything like that. We've developed them ourselves. The next one is our Center for Anti-Semitism Research. And this is really where we do the bulk of our digging. This is where we do our big studies. For example, we did a study that is going to be repeated I believe every 2 years, that really digs into does anti-Semitism come from? Where is it lying in this day and age? And what tools are effective in moving the needle to combat anti-Semitism and hateful behavior? We have our Ratings and Assessment Institute, which, for example, our Jewish Policy Index, which goes state by state to give people a picture of what legislation and what has been is has been passed or is active in any individual state, that helps keep the Jewish community safe. We have our campus report card, which goes through different universities to talk about the the things that administrators are doing to make sure that their campuses are safe places for their students. And we and there's constantly new ones coming out all the time. Really, we are trying to expand the work of the Ratings and Assessment Institute because it is very data and research driven. Um, we are trying to find new ways constantly of using that to assess the situation of how different industries are using anti-Semitism or are addressing anti-Semitism rather. We have our Center for Technology and Society, and that's really where a lot of our work with AI, social media, things like that comes in, and really figuring out how to use these tools to further our mission while also figuring out how these tools can be used in a safer way. And lastly, we have our Center to Combat Anti-Semitism Education. And this is really where the bulk of our um, programming has been developed for K-12 educators and administrators, for universities and college campuses. And this is really where we get all of that information were so that is so important to us about education and the importance of education.
And you're using AI as part of your educational methodology, I understand.
Yes, so we are using AI specifically when it comes to K-12 schools, because what we found is that the people who are using our platforms, the people who are coming to us for guidance, for advice, for figuring out what to do in situations, a lot of the time it's it's individualized, but it's also things that we can learn. We have our own model that is learning with every time someone asks it a question, it learns more and more. It's learning from our own research, our own data. And what it basically can do is it can help guide people in the direction of either what kind of letter should I send to an administrator or to a Board of Education? What kind of response options are there for different incidents as they come? And it really guides, it helps to guide people to the resources that they're truly looking for.
So it's
And it's much,
curricular as well.
I believe so.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a great use of AI, and it sounds like it's kind of a customized environment. It's not like the entire world, but it's a customized bubble in a sense that you have around the AI that's particularly involved with the ADL and the information that you feed into it. So that's pretty exciting use of the technology. So
Yeah, it
looking back,
is.
yeah, looking back over the history of the ADL, starting in the 1930s and onward, you've covered and addressed so many issues of importance to the Jewish people and other groups as well, experiencing discrimination from anti-Jewish sentiment during the Great Depression, developing security measures post 9/11, and to the founding of your ADL Center for Technology and Society to combat the growing threat, as you mentioned, of hate online. So those are just to name a few. I was impressed by the history. And if you go onto the ADL.org website, you'll see decade by decade all of the accomplishments that the ADL has achieved. What are in your mind is kind of the most one of the most like impactful campaigns and accomplishments and that you're most proud of?
I would say that for me, and in when I think about the history of the ADL, there's the thing that stands out to me the most is really our involvement in the civil rights movement. We filed an amicus brief for Brown versus Board of Education. We marched on Washington and recognized that when hate comes for one group, it affects us all. And which kind of goes back to what I was saying before about how really fighting anti-Semitism is helping fight all forms of hate. And really, that to me is the biggest example of how we've done that in the past and how we've proven that theory in the past.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about the ADL?
Sure, I love this one. I think that the biggest misconception is that we're a political organization, and we're not. We are a nonpartisan 501(c)(3). Yes, we have a presence in DC, places like that, but the things that we are working with, working on, and the things that we are trying to advocate for are things that will really that help people of all different marginalized religious groups or ethnicities or races. It's not anything specific to one party or another. It's not anything specific to support. It's not, we're not trying to support things based on the representatives that bring them up, anything like that. It's really that we are just trying to keep to our three pillars: protect, advocate, and educate.
So when we hear that such and such event was considered a hate crime, what when you hear that as an organization, how do you address that, like with the media and with in terms of even in terms of law enforcement and things like that? What does that trigger within the ADL when you hear something was a hate crime?
So that's a really interesting question, I think, and that actually also brings us to another kind of misconception, not about the organization, but kind of about how something gets classified that way. So district attorneys or I believe it's district attorneys, they're the ones who actually classify something as a hate crime. It's not law enforcement, it's not us. We don't decide those things. It's not the lawyers that decide those things. And what that does is it elevates the sentencing if for the individual if they're found guilty or for the whatever entity, the defendant. Um, and I think that what we do with that information is we use it as examples for opportunities to educate. And I think that what it really does is it helps us be able to explain what anti-Semitism looks like in sometimes a more effective way.
So you are representing the Central Pacific region, and you already mentioned the areas that that covers. This is a national program, Mitzvah Expo, national and potentially international, if those of you are listening from other countries. How, how important is it that in terms of ADL's reach nationally and internationally? And can you kind of address for people who are listening outside of this Central Pacific region, Central Western region,
Yeah.
uh, what kinds of, let's say, resources might be available for people in other states and around the country and the world?
Absolutely. So we do have a national reach. We have 27 regional offices across the country that deal with everything from local, state, federal issues. We partner with local law enforcement groups in all cities, major or sometimes not, and also with institutions to make sure that our goal to be a resource, a sounding board, a support matters for matters to them and also helps them when it does involve the Jewish community and when it is related to the Jewish community. And we take a lot of pride in that. I mean, it really is up to the regional offices. It is the people on the ground that really make everything work. Obviously, a lot of our different institutions and centers within the ADL do a lot of work at more of a national level and on a bigger scope. But it's up to us in the regions to really take those findings and take all of that amazing work and get it out there. Make sure that we are finding opportunities to educate our communities. And so I really think that our regional offices are really what drives the work all across the country. And actually, internationally, we do a lot of work as well. I mean, we participate in the J7, which is our international team travels the globe to work with foreign dignitaries and entities to accomplish our mission. And the J7 is a group of countries that have come together to address combating anti-Semitism.
And do you have a national conference that people could attend if they're interested in getting more
We
involved?
do, yes. I wish we were recording a few weeks earlier. We just had our national conference in New York in March. It is called Never Is Now. And when they start publishing information about Never Is Now for 2027, you will be one of the first people I tell about it.
All right. I would definitely consider going. Yes. Uh, I think that's an exciting way to get involved and kind of see what's going on in your organization, meet people, and And then that's really kind of leads me to my next question is how can someone get more involved with the ADL? And whether it's in terms of giving money to the ADL or getting involved in some other way, volunteering, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. I think the most impactful work, like I said, the regions really drive the work. I think the most impactful way to get involved is to do so through your region, through your regional office. And what that can look like is serving as a volunteer leader, serving on a board, participating in our Glass Leadership Institute or in ADL Act, which is kind of the next step after the Glass Leadership Institute or GLI. And there are a lot of opportunities to get involved in that way. Oftentimes, ADL will be involved in statewide lobby days for Jewish causes with other Jewish organizations. We coming together as well, attending those as you can. Obviously, some states are big and we can't get all the way to from San Diego to Sacramento, for example, super easily, but just kind of being aware of those things and helping spread the word of what your regional office does is a great way to get involved.
And if someone wants to give money to your organization, you're a nonprofit, and depend on donations, I'm sure. Um,
Yep.
where would their money kind of go to if they're thinking about it?
Sure. So it really goes to, I mean, really all corners of the organization. It goes to our centers and institutes to really drive their work forward. It comes to our regions and our local offices to make sure that we have the resources that we need to really be getting out there in the community and spreading the education that we can provide.
We've talked about regional, we've talked about national, we talked about international, but I guess it also then comes back to just the personal. If someone experiences discrimination against themselves or a family member or a friend, or they see it in their community, their synagogue, wherever it might be, uh, what's the best way to react to it? What's the best way to address it? And what kinds of resources might the ADL help that person to try to overcome this challenge and address it in the best way possible?
Absolutely. I would say the very first thing is to report. Report, report, report. We have our incident reporting on our website, and I think that that is the most effective thing we can do because not only does it let whoever your most local ADL professional know what has happened and what's going on, it also, in addition to allowing us to be there, allowing us to support that community, that person, it also allows us to keep track of what's going on and see patterns in different things. If we see that a specific, this is just an example, but let's say we get multiple reports, incident reports that all have to do with one school district, then that what that says to us is we need to be in touch with that superintendent. We need to get out there to whatever school district that is and figure out what the problem is, figure out what resources we can use, which of our resources we can use to help this from not continuing, to stop the trend in its tracks and help bring the education of why it's an anti-Semitic incident, why it's harmful to the Jewish members of that community, explain why that is, and really bring it to their attention. I mean, sometimes people just really don't know. It's surprising to me still that sometimes people just really don't realize what exactly they're doing. And so things need to unfortunately sometimes happen in order for us to realize, oh, this person's not really aware of why that's a problematic statement. And how can we educate them? How can we explain to them in a kind way that this is why it's a problem. This is why you really saying that is harmful. And a lot of the times it's really just about that.
So if some incident occurs, do you have a team that goes out and talks to a community member or a school administrator or a politician who seems to be saying things that are, anti or anti-Semitic or in some way working on some sort of a policy that is causing that to occur. Do you have like an action team that kind of goes out and talks to the community, or how do you work with the group that seems to need to be educated?
It depends. That looks different in different spaces, I would say. We don't necessarily have an action team. I think that we basically what our reporting tool does is it uses our AI again, which is great.
Yeah.
And it really funnels the incidents to the right places. So if something is very, very clearly like a legal issue, it'll send it to our legal team, and then they'll kind of run with it from there. They'll figure out what action needs to be taken. Sometimes that means reaching out to the person who reported it. Sometimes that means that there's something bigger there that they need to get more information on, and then they'll start doing their own research. If it's something specifically that needs to be brought to the attention of law enforcement, or based on the example I gave before, a school district, then we have different people who will get involved in that way. We have based on their expertise, based on what they feel like is what they're a subject matter expert on, and how they're able to do that. Sometimes that's regional folks. Other times that's going to be people who are more focused on programming and who are the best suited to educate people, for example, in a K-12 setting, in a in a university setting, things like that. So it's not so much that we have an action team locally. We just really work with our division team, with our national team to make sure that whatever issue needs to be addressed is being done so by the best person for the job.
So, Jackie, looking ahead, what gives you hope about the future of Jewish communal life?
What gives me hope is what I kind of equate that to is my why, the why for why I do this work. And I think there's a few different pieces to it. I grew up with a really strong Jewish identity, and so to me, that's really important. And there's a certain aspect of that identity being challenged for some younger generations. And so if the work that the ADL does can counter some of that and can really reinstill that love for Judaism, that love for the cultural aspects, the community, and really the relationship with Judaism, I think that's something to really be hopeful for. And yeah, that's
So it's
really
kind
the
of,
next generation of folks.
I think what you're sort of saying is establish and solidify the love for yourself first, and then it makes it easier then to fight those who are against you. And I guess that just makes
Yeah,
sense, right?
yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And I mean, what also gives me hope is the fact that our organization isn't just made up of Jewish people. Our organization has tons of people who are non-Jewish and who are doing this work with us. And that also gives me hope of really seeing that in a time that feels very isolating for the Jewish community, we have allies out there who want to support us, who want to have our backs, and just building on those relationships is super important.
Well, in the name itself, Anti-Defamation League, it doesn't actually say Jewish anywhere in there. And so I think that's
Correct.
kind of reflective that it's anyone in the world who is
Yeah.
experiencing any kind of discrimination or hate that is impacting their freedom or their safety or anything like that. So I think
Yes.
that's a good message in a sense. It sort of says who you are as an
Yes.
organization.
It does. And I wouldn't be here if I didn't think it was crucially important work.
It's kind of a divide and conquer situation, and you're using
Yeah, in some
all of the
ways.
many resources that you have. Speaking of resources, we have a showcase page that we've set up for the Anti-Defamation League on mitzvahexpo.org, and I encourage all of you to check it out. And there's some wonderful links there that will direct you to different parts of the organization and how you can get involved further. Jackie, is there any final word you have for our audience today?
I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to share some of what the work that we do. Definitely encourage people to get involved. And yeah, I really hope that we can inspire some people to take some action on their own.
That's right. Well, as our motto says for Mitzvah Expo is get informed and be inspired. And that's, we hope what we've done today accomplish that. Jackie, Solomon, thank you so much for joining us today, representing the Anti-Defamation League and all the incredibly important work that you do yourself and the organization does for the Jewish community and the world. And hopefully the amount of hate that's in this world will diminish with time because of your efforts. So that's all we can hope for, I guess, right?
Yes, that is all we can hope for. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. My special thanks to Jackie Solomont, Senior Associate Regional Director for the Anti-Defamation League Central Pacific Region, for joining me today and sharing the important work of the ADL with our Mitzvah Expo listeners. To learn more about the initiatives of the Anti-Defamation League Central Pacific Region and the ADL nationally, and about other organizations featured on the program, visit our showcase pages on mitzvahexpo.org. While you're there, we invite you to join the Mitzvah Expo community so you can stay up to date on future programs, featured organizations, and events. We invite you to also share a mitzvah you've done in your own life or community. Your good deed may inspire others and help highlight the many ways people can make a difference. You can listen to Mitzvah Expo on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and listen or watch on YouTube, and of course at mitzvahexpo.org. If you enjoyed the program, please follow or subscribe so more people can discover the inspiring work happening across the Jewish community. And we'd love to hear from you. Please write to me at rabbilindabernstein@gmail.com with your comments and suggestions for future featured Jewish organizations. Get informed, be inspired. For Mitzvah Expo, I'm Rabbi Linda Bernstein.
You've been listening to Mitzvah Expo. Learn more at mitzvahexpo.org.
Mitzvah Expo is a production of Vita Media Corporation.